Well, welcome to our September Sites Now, Leading the Way, the topics advancing site success. I am joined by my partners in crime today, Allison Small. She's the Chief Operating Officer at SCRS, and Jimmy Bechtel. He is the Vice President of Site Engagement at SCRS. Welcome, Allison and Jimmy.
Thank you, Sean.
This is Sites Now, and we wouldn't be where we are without the help of our Sites Now supporters. Sites Now was actually built during COVID as a way for us all to connect. We really missed that camaraderie we get at the Site Solution Summits. But we wanted to capture that at least month to month, or when we could throughout the year together through the Sites Now program. These organizations that you see on the screen have helped us move the needle throughout the year. You can also find all of our archives and our work over the last 2.5 years, can you believe that, of Sites Now on our website. And I think Mark is going to drop a quick link into the chat, everyone, just so you have it. You can check out some of the resources. Sometimes we host these meetings and they turn into articles, or they may become we've had white papers, we've had infographics and videos. So a little bit of a mix of media, if you will, based on our Sites Now work. And let's see where we lead today. Each of those sessions you can find on this website that Marcus had shared, and we continue to grow it each and every month. We have one more Sites Now this year. We will be talking with our award winners from this year's summit. That'll be in November, I believe, is our scheduled date. So we'll make sure that we share that with each of you as we approach it. So we're celebrating 10 years, and I've got my colleagues on the line. And before we introduce our guest panelists, we wanted to just hear a little bit about the topics that are actually taking over Hollywood at the Global Summit this year. Hopefully you guys can see my screen okay. I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy and just ask Jimmy, what is some of the initiative work we do? You know, SCRS has a number of ongoing initiatives that begin to inform our programming. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that's helped shape the program this year down in Florida?
Absolutely, Sean. It has been really interesting to see how the initiative work this year has really coincided with a lot of our programming to that point that you made there. We're very excited this year to be able to share some really concerted updates to a lot of our initiatives. We've made some really tremendous progress on a lot of those under with David's help and under the leadership of some of the SCRS team to advance a lot of the work that we've done. We'll be spending some time actually on Saturday morning in hopefully a panel format to discuss some of those initiatives by some of the initiative work stream leaders, members of the community, people like you all that have helped us advance some of that work as subject matter experts in a variety of different capacities. For example, oncology, we've been working very hard on a phase 1 document for sites who are looking to get into phase 1 research that we are excited to hopefully launch at that at the Global Summit. We've also made concerted efforts in the Digital Innovation Initiative. We are looking to announce and launch our best practices and recommendations document for research sites, information they need to be able to participate in DCTs and be successful in their engagement. David has led a lot of our work. Our honorary president, David Volcano, has led a lot of our work in the form of advocacy through SCRS, a passion of his. And we'll be talking about some of the work we did with the government on behalf of a new Medicaid rule that came down as a result of the CARES Act, and how we advocated on behalf of research sites to make changes to that form. And we spoke directly with the staffers that developed that form, and they did let us know that they actually did incorporate changes as a result of the feedback that the site community provided back up to David and I, that we were able to convey to them. We also have Chris, who will be speaking here, has helped co-lead some of our work in an Invoiceables project, so that sites will have some more substantial and valuable information on what they need to do for invoicing the necessary items in their clinical trials. So a really big resource, actually, as you can imagine, several pages worth of information for the site. So more to come on those at the summit. I don't want to spoil it too much of exactly what those are going to be, but we're very, very excited to actually be able to announce some new exciting outcomes from these projects that have been going on for a long time. As a lot of you know, digital innovation has been around since late 2019. So here we are at the culmination of that one in particular. So very excited to be able to share those updates with you all. Again, primarily on Saturday morning.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Jimmy. I know that the one thing that SCRS, when we started to build SCRS, we wanted to make sure that we had a place to talk about the things that were standing in the way of site success, the things that sites were doing to improve outcomes, and what industry needed to know about it. And we needed to do that 365 days a year. I kind of remember this exasperated hour and a half I spent once with Christine when she was just like, it's not enough time. We can't figure this out in a weekend, right? And here we are celebrating that in 10 years. I know one of the big things that we want to focus on is obviously our general session agenda. And I'm curious, Allison, if you could just maybe share a couple of the things, and I'm slowly going through the website as we go, guys, so bear with me. We'll get back to our presentation here, but I wanted to make sure that you guys had an opportunity to kind of explore the website. Allison, who are we hearing from in terms of our general sessions this year, and what do folks need to know about that?
Sure. So I have to say, I am very excited about the general sessions. I'm actually excited about the entire agenda. The summit committee worked really hard. They always work hard, but this year we really focused on bringing it to another level, bringing this uniqueness, making it different from previous years, making sure that we met every attendee's needs by looking at those attendees that are newer to the clinical research industry and those sites that have been around for a while. So we need to make sure that the agenda meets the needs of everyone. So if you haven't had some time to dig into it, take some time. You're going to want to, there's so many opportunities. You're going to want to have a plan when you get to the summit, as you know. We kick off as we always do, the site landscape. So this is really going to set the tone. This is going to set the conversation for the entire weekend with the site landscape. We'll be talking about data that we've collected over the year and talking about, we'll share that data, we'll analyze that data, and then that will help us really identify some of the challenges that we're facing as an industry. And then throughout the summit, look at creating solutions to some of these challenges. And that's really bringing industry together to talk about this. If I can ask you all one thing, please, if you haven't taken that site landscape survey, please take it. Just set aside some time. It's critical that we get everyone's voice on this survey. We are going to be pulling that data soon. So by the end of the week, just set that time aside. It's worth it, and it will help us really move the industry forward. We'll also be hearing from patients. This year, we're going to be kicking off with the patient's voice on Friday. So really listening to them, how clinical research has benefited them, the challenges that they've faced with it. So we'll be excited to hear from all of our patients. And Saturday, oh boy, Saturday is going to be a very, very busy day. As Jimmy mentioned, we'll really be focusing on some of our successes that we've had this year, sharing some of our solutions and tools and resources with you all. Talking about our initiatives. We'll kick that off on Saturday morning. That's going to be a really interactive session. You're going to see some of our sites that have been involved in some of these initiatives and talking about tools that will help the industry. So we're excited about that. We'll go right into technology Technology has just been the hot topic this year. So we'll be talking about what is technology going to look like in years to come. And Site Tank Spria will present, and we'll go into a diversity panel, where we are now and what we're looking at in the future. So you'll see Jerome Adams there. He has presented at previous summits, always great response. And he actually loves the summit, has really enjoyed being part of it. And he asked to be included again. So we're excited to have him part of this. And then Diana Foster, Quita Highsmith, and Jewel Mullen will also be part of that. So a dynamic panel that you won't want to miss. And going on to Sunday, we'll close out with hearing from Transcelerate, ACRO, and then we'll hear from some patients in our diversity panel, which will be a great way to close us out.
You mentioned a couple. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sean.
You mentioned a lot about an initiative work, and it's part of what we're getting it together on today. Just what are the topics moving that sites need to know, need to be informed on. How do like for the folks on the line here who are sites, how do they get involved with initiatives? And then if they're from industry, if they're a sponsor, CRO, or solution provider, how do they get involved?
So anytime we start a new initiative, we make sure that we communicate that with our members. We communicate it with our global impact partners. And then also in membership, if you go under if you're on my SCRS, you'll see advocacy tab, and you'll have a list of all the initiatives. And those are the initiatives that anyone can get involved. We encourage you, if you're interested and you want to be part of the change, this is how to do it, because we accomplish a lot. We focus on solutions in these initiatives.
Yeah, so everyone, I'll drop this in the chat, but I will say that take a look at the initiatives. You may have an interest in talking to us about being part of that. Our sponsors, CROs, and solution providers that are GIPs have access to those initiatives. Many of you have colleagues or are actually working on some of those initiatives now. And it's what we hope to help build out programming throughout the year. Sometimes there's toolkits involved to change things along the way. We've done some benchmarking, but those initiatives moving into next year will include our diversity, digital initiative, oncology, and workforce task force. And there's going to soon be one more added around payments and budget. So really looking forward to kind of digging into some of those. It's all volunteer work and conversation. And they've been doing really awesome work. So thank you for sharing that and a little bit more about our agenda.
Sean, can I add one more thing and then I'll?
Yes. What would you like to add?
All right, the gala. So if you've attended the summit, we do have our gala where we celebrate some of our award winners. But the theme for this year is all that glitter. So bring your glitter to the gala. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're going to celebrate afterwards at our site reception with a really fun band where there's be opportunities just to have fun and do some networking, and we all look forward to that.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate the support from the Advara team this year on the Eagle Award Gala, and then our site appreciation reception with Cineos. So we're excited to host those again. We'll see you down in Hollywood, Florida, for those of you who are joining us. And if you can't make it, we'll have a recap with some of our award winners right here at Sites Now in the month preceding. And, Allison mentioned, but like our programming, the topics that we continue to hear about are relationships, the baseline of what our relationships mean between really the clinical research ecosystem, but we're seeing, sites often we're frustrated with the way conversations or project management's going. Sometimes our colleagues don't understand it and are looking here to improve it. This is why you've seen a big jump in the roles of site-facing roles within industry over the last 10 years, and we're real grateful for that. Communication, of course, patient engagement, diversity, and everything you see here. These are all things that we kind of dive into on the regular at SCRS, but in specifics at the global meeting. What are you guys excited to talk about? We brought on two of our best and brightest with Chris Hoyle and Carrie Venn. They have been instrumental in not only shaping the Site Solution Summits over the years, but also SCRS. So we've got, we have them both on the line today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I know they're both speaking at this year's meeting, and I'm gonna throw it over to Carrie to get us started. Carrie, what are some of the topics impacting site success right now? What are you hearing, and what do you want to share with us today?
Yeah, obviously there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. Half the struggle I find is choosing which one. That's always the hardest part. But I'm personally speaking about FDA inspections. I think everyone from a site perspective is always, the audits. And I think there's a lot of questions right now about what regulators are doing with all of the DCT and, the remote work and our traditional site model has changed so much, yet we haven't really gone through that wave of inspections, which really ultimately drive the SOPs both at the sponsor level as well as the site's perspective. So that's going to be very interesting to get, the experience sharing. I think that's always the value add, is getting the people within those sessions really sharing that experience. It doesn't become more of a presentation, but the sharing of experiences and talking through that is the highest of value for me. Then obviously a site model, like the successful site model. What does that look like in this day and age? The sustainability, how do you stay profitable when you consider inflation? Just all the impact to change to the protocols. So those are kind of primarily what I'm speaking about. There's obviously conversations always about how to look at DCT and how to operationalize it from a site perspective in conjunction with what sponsors and CROs are using. So there'll be a lot of conversations there. And there's never a shortage of recruitment. How are people recruiting at this stage, and what's working, what's not working, and how to incorporate that within your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Carrie. And Carrie joined us last month. We talked about getting to know the modern research site, and we talked a lot about these issues. And a big one kind of centered around workforce and hiring. And I'm curious, what are some of the topics you all are looking to dive into as you approach the Site Solutions Summit or day to day at your office? Please send them in the chat. We'd love to talk with them with you about it while we're here today. Chris, I feel like you have also seen it all, because you've been working on this summit just like all summits since the beginning. And what are you excited to tell us about when we get to Florida this year?
Yeah, I think in addition to everything Carrie mentioned, there's two main things that I'm looking to do. The first is, what does 2023 look like for my pipeline? So looking for that next study, doing the business development, doing the networking. And I find that at SCRS Site Solutions Summit, this is the best conference out there for sites right now to do that. Over the years, and I think I've been coming to the summit since 2007, I believe. It's been amazing to build those relationships with both the sponsors and the CROs, and that helps us build our expectations for the following year. So looking forward to all the networking and business development that can be done at the summit. The second thing, and what I'm going to be talking about during my panel, I actually have two panels, one at 1:30 and one at 3 o'clock, is kind of budgeting in this new age of conducting clinical trials. So we're not going to be talking about study procedures within those sessions. We're going to be talking about some of the hidden costs that you need to be thinking about and all those invoiceables. We're going to bring to the table a toolkit that you can take home and serve as your checklist for you in the budgets that you'll be negotiating for next year. And, just budgeting for unique items, whether it be remote monitoring or, hybrid remote study visits, kind of outside the box things that, we forget about that you should be invoicing for and covering your costs. But, those are the two kind of main things that I'm looking forward to. And, with that, I'll hand it back to you, Sean and Allison.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. One of the things that we've been hearing, you mentioned pipeline or relationships, and I know you guys are bringing teams. And how many folks? I'm just curious. I'm not seeing a ton of cameras on right now, so bear with me because I'm curious. In the chat, how many folks are sending teams? How many people have more than one person headed to the summit this year? We're seeing a lot of folks talking about those teams, and wow, yeah, 10. Yeah, around now.
Sean, to add
Thanks,
to that,
Karen.
I just did an inventory of our registration, and it's incredible how many people are bringing. Like, we have a sponsor company bringing up to 25 people, CRO bringing up to 20, and this is across the board. So there's multiple people coming from many organizations this year more than ever.
I think we're all excited to get back together, that is for sure. And even though we've been to different meetings this year, I think it's important to connect. One of the things that industry I hear on some of our GIP calls, I've heard it in some of the sessions we've been invited to speak in recently, is that we're starting to see an uptick in sites declining studies. And, that could be a factor of the protocol is too challenging, the contract's one-sided. I'm curious if anyone has had that experience recently, and what does industry need to know about what's happening at the site level, guys? Because that seems to be something that a lot of our sponsor and CRO folks in particular are interested in learning about at this year's summit. Carrie, I see you.
I was going to say I
unmuted,
can
so
jump
go
in. I was
yeah.
the silence part, right?
Sure.
So, I think there's been obviously an increase in research opportunities. That's been a part of the workforce challenge. I think that's a known thing, but with that comes competing trials, and certainly sites are becoming more smarter or savvy in regards to kind of looking at the trial, evaluating the cost to run that trial, and looking at the trial that best suits them. And also getting to the point of saying no. I think, sites always were nervous historically to say no to a trial, and they would accept it and maybe not do well in it. And we've been at SCRS for many years, and I'm sure Chris can validate it, but trying to teach sites to say no, because it actually doesn't satisfy or serve the CRO or sponsor, because it's a lost opportunity for them, extra money at cost to open a site. So maybe also that also happening, but definitely some tougher trials, maybe more rare disorder type trials, more no's related to that. But those are just some of the common things I'm seeing here.
Do we have a path through some of that, everybody? I mean, do we have I think this is something that we feel like we worked so hard to kind of get to a place where we were able to connect everyone, and then to feel like these complexities, there's got to be something that we can begin to bring to market and help people kind of, whether that's a checklist. We talked about having a sort of, before you roll out that protocol, here are some tips and ideas to talk through. What else are people seeing with regards to this challenge of finding the sites to manage your studies? Carrie mentioned workforce. Chris, is that something that you guys are experiencing as well? Has it been any kind of workforce challenges there?
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody's struggling with workforce. I think for us, we put a lot of emphasis and focus on vaccine research. So, if you're having to decide between a vaccine study that's going to enroll 100 patients and a small diabetes study that's going to enroll 5 to 10 patients, that comes into play there. So I think, the site community has become a lot more savvy when it comes to understanding how to look at protocols and really decide if this is a study that fits their patient populations. And we all know the ramifications of not meeting your enrollment goals. And I think that message has, really hit our sites. If we don't think we can hit a certain enrollment goal, we're going to turn that study down. So those are some of the things that we look at. And, I think the idea of competing study used to be, a diabetes study versus diabetes study. But we look at competing studies across therapeutic areas. I mean, you're competing for resources.
That makes sense, Chris. I appreciate it. I mean, I feel like we often have some rare disease. Carrie, you mentioned that too, and these are important. This is important work, and finding the right balance, time and the availability of patients is something that we hope to continue to be able to support as best we can. Where is technology going to come into the conversation, guys? What are some of the hot topics with regards to that? Because I feel like we keep hearing about all the technology coming downstream. I feel like we're building a car with the driver in mind, which is awesome, but we forgot to include the mechanic sometimes. And so being able to kind of work through it, I'm curious what you guys are experienced with tech. Is it training? Is it too much? What are some of the things you guys are hearing at your sites?
Yeah, and I think even the conversation at the SCRS is really about what people are using. So that becomes the sharing part. Like, what are sites doing? Are you actually implementing your own? How are you working with sponsors that are, forcing that tech on top of what you're also doing? So that becomes the collaboration piece at SCRS that I always look forward to, because it kind of gives sites an idea of which direction to take or to potentially look at. I think there's a lot of wait and see. And so just that conversation happening is the start. But obviously at the site, the frustrations become the continued conversations we're having about, the training, maybe the tech not working, the support or help desk, the cost to run it. Those are all the typical conversations that we're going through right now.
I feel like we've been waiting a long time though for some of this to filter out, right? Like there's still just so many different tech solutions out there. And it really is challenging to try and find what the best one is that's a good fit for you. So I appreciate that, Carrie. I agree. I love getting together with other sites and finding out what they're using and what's working and what's not. But still, way too many choices out there.
Yeah, I think we're never going to limit the amount of innovation. Like that's the whole point of clinical. I mean, we're sort of in it in a collegial but entrepreneurial way to begin to figure out new solutions to these issues. So I mean, tech's a good thing. I need a better phrase than tech burden. I don't know who coined. It just stuck somehow. It's like on a bumper sticker, and now people wear it around a shirt when I'm at a conference. And I'm like, no, that's not. Burden is the wrong vibe. It needs to be. But it does need to take into user case, and our users are our sites, and I feel like that's a missing component sometimes. What are things that sites on the line when you're managing so much tech on top of the other things? What are things that have been working, and is that something you could maybe talk about in some of the sessions at the summit? So Lisa, I'll throw it over to you guys. I know you've been growing like crazy, doing a great job. What are some of the things you all are doing right now in terms of grabbing, when you're working with technology that seems to work for the team and operationally at within the network?
Yeah, so we're using a couple of different things. I mean, we've got an eSource and we have our eReg solution. And then we have some of our own proprietary systems that help us with recruitment and pulling patients through. But it is a challenge to find what's the right fit, you know, and I've sat through so many different demos, and so far nothing seems to take me, you know, from the beginning of the journey all the way through to the end. So I'd love to see more kind of integration and systems that can talk to each other a little bit better. That's the kind of step that I'd like to see next.
We keep thinking, like, could you have like an experiential situation where, you know, we've got our sites, and some sponsors and CROs use site advocacy groups to vet technology, and have done it very, very successfully, making the right decisions, making the right development calls. But I'm curious if we can build an experience where what it would look like if we just work together, working through the tech challenges that we're going to have rolling it out to sites, and what sponsors and CROs are hoping to get from metrics and also performance. And we hope to kind of begin to tackle that experiential vibe next year at our we're going to have a tech meeting. Yep, and it's called SCRS West. You guys heard it here first. Some of our sponsors and CROs, some of the exhibitors maybe have seen the material for it, but we just began. We had plans, okay, in 2020 to host this meeting, because we were hearing this, and this was, if you remember, guys, this is crazy, right? We left 2019. You know what the top issue was decentralized clinical trials. So it wasn't even called that. It was called Sightless. I know you could write it sounds like a beginning of a life science horror movie. It's just Sightless. So that's what we were hearing, right? All the investment was following that. We were going to conferences and meeting people, and first thing they would say is, yeah, it's Sightless. And then it became decentralized. And what did we work on? We worked on defining terms. We worked on trying to get sites more informed around what DCTs could actually provide as a opportunity, as an advantage to their operations versus a hindrance. And then COVID hit. And just with that, so did the need and the awareness of these systems. And this is something that we've got to continue to come to the table on and talk about, because industry is looking at ways to improve patient access, and this is one. I was sharing with my colleagues earlier. I had an eye exam yesterday. It was so weird. It was like everything has changed about this eye exam. You used to go in, you wait in line, you get in, the doctor would see you, go through the machines. This was like a kid came out and went, "Okay, we're ready to see you," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, who are you?" And by the time we were through with the exam, the guy said that the doc came in 5 minutes, looked at everything, and he said, "You know, we're probably going to begin to do this virtually, like everything's going to move in this direction." And we have, of course, folks that we work with in the space. That would be an amazing advantage to not have to, you know, go in and make those appointments. And that's just a commercial application, something that you saw in everyday life. But as I kind of asked him about it, he said, the transition has just been, how do you make it an advantage for the doctors as well as the patients? And that's what we're trying to figure out. And I feel like there's some room to grow there on that. Some of the comments you guys are sharing, you know, I'm stuck on tech right at the moment, but it's about study complexity. See a couple of folks mention that, and how that might affect not only your tech decisions, but also the way we recruit patients and team members. What do you guys, in terms of that complexity, how would you compare it to even 5 years ago, pre-COVID? I'm just curious, Carrie and Chris, what are some, Jeff, Lisa, what are some things that you guys are seeing right now? Why is it getting so much more challenging, and what are some solutions we can kind of bring to kind of help folks find the patients they need?
I think we're having to cast a much wider net now than we used to have to cast. So, and to speak to that complexity, you know, if you look at the number of endpoints has gone through the roof, inclusion, exclusion criteria. I mean, it used to be, you know, a page, and now it's like a couple of pages. And so, you know, as that patient profile becomes more complex, then that just makes that burden on the site becomes greater, because you just have to cast a wider net. You have to make X number, more phone calls to find those kind of perfect unicorn patients.
I also think there's a bit of, I think everyone here probably has heard of the whole denomination of quiet quitting. There is definitely a workforce kind of energy shift, I would say. And I don't know if it's everyone's just tired of the COVID and kind of what had happened through that. It's an employees market right now. So the ability to kind of maybe challenge, or if something is not going the way they would want it from a work-life balance, then they're ready to kind of move on to the next opportunity or look for that grass is greener concept. And it's really difficult at a site when you have, obviously the complexity of that visit workload has increased, the complexity of the number of tech options. So it just becomes very overwhelming. That's kind of the common theme I'm hearing. It's overwhelming. The ability to do 2 or 3 visits a day was something that we just required, which doesn't seem like a lot, but now it's like 1 or 2. And so we have to kind of get around, how do we get back to that pace without the staff feeling that burden? But that it's a real situation. And then if you add sponsors, different, sponsors coming in and them layering on expectations that are even beyond the site, it's a lot. And they look for kind of maybe simplifying their job. That's really what people are looking for, that work-life balance. And so simplifying that job is a key element. And at research, it isn't a simple job. So some of the things we're doing is really looking at simplifying some of the tasks and who is responsible for those tasks. So lessening those particular tasks that an individual has to do, and trying to highlight those tasks to the right person and what brings them joy. But it really is a different mind shift. You used to look at the coordinator would do it all, and I think that really doesn't exist anymore. But that's part of the layering of the challenges we're dealing with.
When you guys, I hear you there, Kiri. We talked about that last month. Even just task management, the incredible challenges you have. Is there any other industry you all know of where we exist in this ecosystem here? And so when you grab a great performing person from a site, it somewhere along the path, it could damage the work that you're doing with the site. We come from other markets. If we were doing different things, different types of work, that sort of attrition and transition would be commonplace. But when it impacts collective work in between organizations, it does become very challenging. And I think it's the awareness is something we can try to host, but it's also being aware of working together on the staff necessary to move the study forward.
I saw a quote, it's interesting, from Jeannie Heck the other day, talking about at the sponsor CROs, they have a mandate to have 2-year minimum experience in research field. So that's why I think sites have become, let's call it a ground to hire into the pharma. They have to get rid of that kind of archaic process, and look at how to bring on new staffing and onboard them, similar to what sites have to do anyways. But I think that's a different shift, because the biggest burden I'm finding right now is my managers, having to deal with that, onboard someone, train them up to the expectation that, sponsors are requiring. And then, we lose them at a much shorter time to a sponsor or CRO, and just how demoralizing it feels to that manager and how they own that kind of loss. And it's really tough. I'm just trying to be speaking openly here, but it was just a really interesting concept that I thought maybe that's part of the reason why sites are becoming that experienced person that they can hire.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate to at least be able to have a dialogue where we can talk about it. If people go, "Hey man, we're going to hire who we hire," right? Most people would respond in that way. But the dialogue here can be about, we're going to need to grow the life science industry, period. Otherwise, those studies you're turning away, everyone, they're going to keep growing, and there's just not enough PIs to keep up with the work. And the ones that are talented enough to recruit into the space, they're going, "Oh, let me hear all the benefits of changing my business model around this," right? And they get into the nitty gritty and find challenges. So I feel like there is going to be an opportunity to talk about that a little bit more and kind of build some angles of entry into our industry that maybe we just hadn't thought of. And we're working on right now on student programs for mostly sites inside of their locality, you know, where they're based. How do you reach out to the schools in the area? What does an intern program look like without the headache of running interns? You know, there's a number of different things that we're thinking about as we approach that topic. But it's important to share that. And while we're on the topic of sharing, you guys will go to a lot of conferences. Boy, life science, we have so many. And there's a couple good ones going on right now, this week. And I'm curious, you get back, you know, sometimes we're pretty beat after you have 3 days of a meeting, but how do you successfully socialize what you hear and learn at a meeting? And I'm opening that up to everyone. But I'll ask my esteemed colleagues and panelists if you could get us started. So Carrie and Chris, once you get back, how do you begin to socialize this with your stakeholders enough to kind of share the ideas, or at least the learning moments that you gain, and hopefully have a return on investment or energy in change?
Sean, I'll take a stab at that. I mean, you know, the timing of your meeting is always great for us. It's typically in early October, and then I follow that up with our annual meeting for our sites in November, and we start to strategize about 2023. And what I do is I take a lot of notes at the summit, and then that helps us build my agenda with our sites as to what we should be expecting for the foreseeable future. You always pick up what Christine used to call nuggets of information that we can implement and share at our sites. You know, maybe there's some new clients that we meet, and some new technology that we should be looking at. So for me, I take all of that, I roll it up into our annual meeting agenda that I learn at the summit, and then we strategize as a group as to, you know, what we can do with those nuggets or, you know, key contacts that we meet at the summit.
I won't add much more to that because I'd love to hear from the group what they do, but it's similar. We basically, you know, have those nuggets, and we create kind of what we call rocks here, which are basically goals that we're focused on outside of our normal day-to-day business to achieve, and creating that strategy. So that's the same kind of process that we go through. And the difference this year, I think, for us is we're just building our team, because there's so many nuggets to get. It's like, how do you ensure that you have sufficient people to kind of focus on specific areas? So that's what we've done this year, is a different process for them to own it.
I know you guys, I love that you guys use rocks and traction, right? So, you know, you have that concept is really around understanding what matters most to, in this case, the business, right? But also just the health of the work. And can you come back to it? How do you report on it? How do you make it measurable? One thing that I think our team tries to do is set a time to talk about it. Now, that might seem like no kidding, but the reality is that it's got to be on that calendar somewhere for us. And when we sit back and talk about all the ideas that we have, it's almost like that the opportunity will pass if you don't make some time to talk through it. I see some really, really veteran conference and idea people on here. I know y'all are having your cameras off because you're working. Is today, it's Wednesday? Is it National PJ Day or something? You guys are shy, but
hey Sean, I'll jump in here.
Okay, give it to me, Malachi. Tell me.
So I'm coming at it from a service provider standpoint, but you know, I tend to do kind of meeting note summaries or like conference summaries, just kind of, again, those nuggets, those rocks, those like, hey, these are the things that kind of popped out, conversations, you know, that I thought were worthy to share with the organization, or common themes. You know, if you end up talking about something multiple times throughout the course of the conference, you're like, okay, is that like a new theme? Is it a reiteration of an old theme, you know, or an old industry trend, or something that's new that we should be paying attention to? Either for our own products and product improvement, or just sites and site staff are end users, even though sponsors and CROs are typically our customers and that we contract with. So, will it affect, them? How will it affect them? Could it help them? And have those kind of, first and foremost, just written down, shared with the organization to key people. That's like the first step. Secondly, I then tend to bring it up in conversations that I have with clients and with customers and with people like, hey, I noticed actually at this other conference has been a trend or a challenge around decentralized or hybrid, or hey, there's this diversity, patient diversity issues that are happening. Are you seeing those coming up more and more? So I try to incorporate them into my day-to-day, as I speak to either existing customers or new customers of ours. And it does tend to spark, I think, some different thoughts and ideas. And then I also try to hold people accountable to things that they say that they would do, right? If you're going to a conference and you're tasked with innovating and you're tasked with doing something new, even though a lot of technology systems get deployed, but then you just go back to your regular job and you really don't innovate, you really don't change, you don't do anything, that's not really helping anybody. So I try to kind of help in a very professional and courteous way, like, challenge people to, to do things differently. But it's not always an easy conversation, as you can imagine.
I get it. Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think when you're talking about taking those steps, sometimes it's just having a safe place to share them. One thing that we sort of grabbed a hold of from Christine, and you'll hear this term we always say, like, there's no witching, right? And it's hard when you're dealing with challenges. You're like, oh my gosh, the solution is right in front of us. Can't you just see what we're talking about? You get frustrated. But those bringing solutions, that's why it's called the Solution Summit and Site Solution Summit, and looking at it from a perspective of, okay, this is a problem. I want to complain. I do kind of want to share it, but let's talk about it from a solution. Where do we collaborate on this? That's what makes life science clinical research so amazing. And I'll never forget the first time I had been to the Site Solution Summit. I was like, I had known Chris for a long time previously, but Christine had invited me to come down, and she said, all these guys, like, they're competitors, or I'm confused. Like, and they're all competitors, but they're not. I mean, we don't compete the way that I'm competing for a position. It's just that we are in it because we're all doing the same things. And in a room, I listen to people just completely, take off the mask and be able to share really why did it have to be a certain way. And those conversations have led to some pretty important changes. I feel like we're talking about moments when you for those of you attending in October, we'll talk about a lot of moments as we open the meeting, reflecting on 10 years and all the last that we could write a book, I think, over the last couple of years. But the reality is that people go, well, what are you changing? And I go, I don't know if we're changing. We have a mountain to climb in some days, but it's these moments of little wins, these moments that I think makes the summit special, and I hope makes the work you guys are doing special as you approach, maybe something that you're thinking about as you come towards the summit. What is it you want to improve from your organization? How will we do it? And I see some other ideas. Before I end, I just wanted to say, we're real excited to share those moments with you once again. And from my sponsor and CROs, how do we help make the topics? You guys are brave. You come and you hear a lot of feedback from us. Sometimes it's challenging. Sometimes it's like, we're trying to give like a big group hug here, but like the idea is that it's not always easy. What are some things we can do to help make it easier to return to your organizations with the right tools and thoughts to move it forward. Kind of like what Malachi was saying and Gary was saying about those nuggets or rocks. How do we help you guys revisit that and provide the best experience we can? I'm just curious what you guys have, if anyone wants to chime in. Mark, I see that Mark is the Sites Now presenter, but also a GIP with Bear, and he mentions how important it is to hear from everyone. I appreciate that. A lot around site payments as a specific example and changing the process. So as you can see, there are amazing stories. There's amazing moments where folks have taken the feedback and turned it into something that moves their work ahead. Mark, I saw, would you care to comment on just like any of the ways your team sort of, socializes the stuff that you hear at a summit or a Sites Now?
Yeah, I think that, thanks, Sean. I think that in all the times that Bear's been coming to the summit, we come away and we have this enormous list of different items that we want to try to implement. And many times, our eyes are bigger than our stomach, I guess I would say, and a lot of times, right? We would love to do everything. And then there's just sometimes you can't get to it all. And I know site payments was always a top 3 topic for years. And we took that back. And I think that one of the things that's important is the voice of the customer, right? I mean, and I think the voice of sites saying that, we need sponsors to do something different. Okay, well, we took that as a serious problem for sites to be able to maintain what they need to do to conduct their business, and many times on behalf of us, right? On behalf of the sponsors. So we took that on, and it took a little while, but we actually changed our internal process. To be quite honest, I mean, we have now an external vendor that does our site payments, and our payments are done in, I think it's like net 30 days or something like that for all payments. So, and it started as a US initiative, and then it got rolled out globally. I mean, I think that was one thing. I think another thing that came about, which I know my colleague Donna Libretti Cook is on the phone. One of the Site Tank winners, Greg Foltz and the Kits for Life. I mean, Bear has been a huge proponent of Kits for Life since we saw that. Donna and I were, I think, tripping over chairs, getting to one another at the conference when we said we have to be involved. And I think that since then, there's been a huge uptick in this, and there's been a lot of great partners, Sanofi, LabCorp, Janssen, I'm sure I'm leaving people out, and I apologize, but there's been a huge uptick in this. And that's just a great example of things that we've actually implemented. For us, Kits for Life is now no different than, I don't know, how somebody returns study medication or documents AEs during clinical trial. It is now a standard for every single one of our US clinical trials we run. So we repurpose all of the lab kits. And those are just 2 big examples. But I just think that sites being one of our main customers, patients being another, it pulls a lot of weight when we're trying to move the needle in the big, ship that we're trying to steer here as a sponsor. It does pull a lot of weight. So I would continue to make sure sites are speaking up for the top things that are issues or challenges for them. And we're going to try to make the relationship and customer experience as best we can on behalf of Bear. Anyway, that's my thought.
Thanks, Mark. That's awesome. We appreciate you sharing that, and we don't get a chance to be candid in the moment and share some of the things that you've done. Of course, Greg's work is we love it too, and we're excited for what he's done to move. You can learn more about that. I don't have his website right in front of me, but Allison, you might. So we can share that with everyone, just so you're aware of Kids for Life. Well, guys, we talked a lot about the topic, a lot of different topics. It was kind of a different vibe. We didn't want to have like presentation today. We wanted to hear from Carrie and Chris and our team and all of you about the things that you were talking about. And while we may have been a little shyer than normal, that's okay. We still were able to talk through, workforce, DCTs, experiential opportunity. We could really use some help on that as we approach SCRS West and the tech meeting. Diversity, of course, our patient engagement, and a number of other awesome topics that we're going to cover again here within the Site Solutions Summit and our next Sites Now. So whether you're finding your voice today somewhere along the way, and that moment has already happened or yet to happen, we wish you nothing but success. We want to thank you for being part of our Sites Now community as always, and being willing to our sponsors and CROs, like I said, brave to continue to come and talk through the things that they're trying to change among their operations and their organizations. And to my colleagues, Carrie and Chris, another great job as always. Thank you for always being a wonderful advocate for not only sharing your site voice, but encouraging other sites to find their voice. So with that, we'll see you hopefully in October, and if not, on our next Sites Now. Bye, everybody.